You, Hannah breathed, her face going pale as the emergency lights revealed the man whose grocery bill she'd just paid. The storm raged outside Megamart, but inside the world had suddenly become much more dangerous. You're the one who's been... Don't say it. Viktor Novak cut her off desperately, his dark eyes darting around the trapped store filled with stranded customers. Not here. Not now. If they realize who I am, if they connect us. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper, his Czech accent thick with fear. Your daughter's life depends on keeping my secret. Hannah's hands trembled as the full weight of his words hit her. This wasn't just the mysterious stranger who'd been kind to her during the power outage. This was Viktor Novak, the billionaire CEO whose construction empire was systematically destroying her neighborhood, forcing families from their homes. The man her community blamed for their displacement. The man some people would kill to get their hands on. And she'd just paid for his groceries with her own hard-earned money. They're looking for me, Viktor continued, his voice barely audible above the storm. If word gets out that I was here tonight, that you helped me... His jaw tightened. There are people who would use you to get to me. Your daughter would become a target. Hannah's heart pounded as she processed the impossible situation. Around them, 50 other customers remained trapped by the storm, completely unaware that the most hated man in their community was standing right among them. One word from her could unleash their fury. One word could also put destiny in unimaginable danger. Why should I protect you? She whispered fiercely. After everything you've done to people like me? Viktor's eyes met hers, and for a moment, Hannah saw something that stunned her, genuine anguish. Because despite what you think you know about me, he said quietly, I would never let harm come to an innocent child. And right now, keeping my identity secret is the only thing standing between your daughter and people who wouldn't hesitate to use her against me. The lights flickered ominously, and thunder crashed overhead, as Hannah realized her simple act of kindness had just entangled her in a web of danger she never could have imagined. One choice to pay for a stranger's groceries had put her family at the center of a billionaire's nightmare. And the most terrifying part? She was starting to believe he was telling the truth. 20 minutes earlier, Hannah had been having an ordinary night, double shift at Megamart, counting down the hours until she could get home to Destiny and collapse into bed. She'd been tired, yes, but content. Now she stood in the emergency lighting, staring at the most dangerous man in her community, her world tilted completely off its axis. How long have you known? Viktor asked quietly, his eyes scanning the other trapped customers to ensure they weren't being overheard. I didn't, Hannah whispered back. Not until the lights came up and I really looked at you. Mrs. Patterson recognized you first. She's got a memory like a steel trap. Hannah's voice grew harder. She lost her house last month because of your developments, had to move in with her daughter across town. Viktor's jaw tightened with what looked like genuine pain. I remember that property. The house was condemned by the city. Foundation was cracking. Electrical was dangerous. She'd lived there 47 years, Hannah cut him off. Raised 6 children in that house. And your relocation assistance? It covered first month's rent in the cheapest apartment she could find, 20 miles from everything she knew. Hannah, you don't understand the full situation. I understand enough. Hannah glanced around at the stranded customers, many of whom she recognized from her neighborhood. Do you see Mr. Rodriguez over there? You displaced his family too? And that young mother with the twins? She's been sleeping in her car since her apartment building got torn down for your luxury condos. Each revelation hit Viktor like a physical blow. These weren't abstract statistics in a development report. These were real people, with faces and stories and lives his decisions had disrupted. I never meant for anyone to be hurt, he said, his accent thick with emotion. Intent doesn't matter much when the result is homelessness, Hannah replied sharply. Then her expression shifted to confusion. But I don't understand something. If you're worth billions, why are you shopping at Megamart at midnight during a storm? Why not send an assistant or have groceries delivered to your penthouse? Viktor was quiet for a long moment, weighing how much truth he could share. Because sometimes even billionaires get lonely, he said finally. Sometimes we need to feel human. Something in his tone made Hannah study his face more carefully. Beneath the expensive clothes and confident bearing, she saw something she recognized: isolation. The kind of deep loneliness that money couldn't fix. "You came here to feel human," she repeated slowly. "And I helped you. God, what does that make me?" "It makes you kind," Victor said softly. "In a world where I'm used to people wanting something from me, you gave something to me. Asked for nothing in return. Because I didn't know who you were. Does that matter?" Victor stepped closer, and Hannah caught the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with rain. "Your kindness didn't come from knowing my bank account. It came from seeing another human being who needed help." Hannah wanted to argue, but something in his eyes stopped her. There was vulnerability there she hadn't expected, pain that seemed genuine. "The people looking for you," she said quietly. "Who are they?" Victor's expression darkened. "Let's just say that when you accumulate wealth and power, you also accumulate enemies, some more dangerous than others." "What kind of enemies?" "The kind who wouldn't hesitate to hurt innocent people to get what they want." Victor's voice dropped even lower. "There's been credible threats against me, against people close to me. My security team insisted I vary my routines, stay unpredictable. Coming here tonight wasn't just about loneliness. It was about disappearing for a few hours." Hannah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. "And now I'm involved. I'm hoping you're not. I'm hoping no one noticed, no one made the connection." "Victor," both their heads snapped toward the voice. A man in his 30s with a phone in his hand was staring directly at them, his eyes wide with recognition. "Oh my God, it is you," the man said loudly. "Victor Novak, I can't believe you're here." Several other customers began turning to look. Hannah felt Victor tense beside her as whispers started rippling through the store. "That's him," someone said. "That's the developer. The one who bought out Maple Street. My cousin lost his apartment because of him." The atmosphere in the store shifted palpably. The warm community feeling of people helping each other through a storm began transforming into something much more volatile. "Hannah," Victor said urgently, "whatever happens, stay away from me. Don't let them associate us." But it was too late. Mr. Rodriguez had approached them, his face dark with anger. "You," he said, pointing a shaking finger at Victor, "you destroyed my family's life." "Sir, I understand you're upset," Victor began. "Upset?" Rodriguez's voice rose. "My children had to change schools. My wife lost her job because we had to move so far away. You think upset covers what you've done to us?" More people were gathering now, forming a loose circle around Victor. Hannah found herself inadvertently placed between him and the growing crowd, her heart racing as she realized how quickly the situation was escalating. "Please," Victor said, raising his hands peacefully. "I know you have every right to be angry. If we could just talk." "Talk?" The man who'd first recognized Victor laughed bitterly. "Like you talked to the city council before you bribed them to change the zoning laws?" "I never bribed anyone," Victor said firmly. "Everything I've done has been legal." "Legal isn't the same as right," Hannah found herself saying, echoing the words she'd spoken to him earlier. Victor looked at her with surprise and something that might have been hurt. But before he could respond, the situation deteriorated further. "Why are you defending him?" Mrs. Patterson had joined the group, her elderly voice sharp with betrayal as she looked at Hannah. "Child, don't you know what this man has done to our community?" "Mrs. Patterson, I'm not defending anyone," Hannah said carefully, acutely aware that every word was being scrutinized. "I'm just saying we should stay calm." "Calm?" Another voice joined in. "Easy for you to say. You still have your job, your home. Some of us lost everything because of him." Victor stepped forward, drawing attention back to himself and away from Hannah. "If you want to be angry with someone, be angry with me. But don't blame Hannah for anything. She has nothing to do with this." "Then why were you two over here talking so privately?" someone called out. Hannah's mind raced. One wrong word could expose that she'd helped Victor, potentially making her a target of the crowd's anger. But she also realized that Victor was deliberately trying to protect her, even at the cost of making his own situation worse. He was asking about the storm. Hannah said quickly, "Whether the roads were safe? That's all." It was a weak explanation, but Victor immediately supported it. "I'm not familiar with this area. I was concerned about driving in these conditions. The crowd seemed to accept this, but the tension remained thick. Victor had become the focus of years of accumulated frustration and displacement, and being trapped in a store with him was bringing all those emotions to the surface. "You know what I think?" The first man pulled out his phone again. "I think we should call some reporters. Let them know that Victor Novak shops at regular stores just like the little people he displaces." "Put the phone away," Victor said, his voice taking on a commanding tone that reminded everyone exactly how powerful he was. "Taking pictures of private citizens without consent is harassment." "Private citizen?" Rodriguez laughed harshly. "You're a public figure who destroys communities for profit. You gave up privacy rights when you decided to play God with other people's lives." The circle was tightening, and Hannah could feel the energy shifting from anger to something more dangerous. These people had lost their homes, their stability, their sense of community. Finding Victor here, vulnerable and trapped, felt like a chance for justice they'd never get in a courtroom. "Everyone needs to calm down," Hannah said loudly, stepping into the center of the conflict. "This is a public place, and we're all stuck here together until the storm passes. Fighting isn't going to help anyone." "Stay out of this, Hannah," Rodriguez said, but not unkindly. "This doesn't concern you." If only he knew, Hannah thought. But she couldn't back down now. Whatever Victor had done, whatever damage his business decisions had caused, she couldn't stand by and watch a mob form in her workplace. "It concerns all of us," she said firmly. "We're supposed to be neighbors helping neighbors tonight, not enemies attacking enemies." "He's no neighbor," someone muttered. "He's a predator." Victor's hands clenched at his sides, but he remained silent. Hannah could see the cost of his restraint, the way he was forcing himself not to respond to the increasingly personal attacks. "You want to know what kind of man you're protecting?" Mrs. Patterson looked directly at Hannah. "He had my house condemned over a hairline crack in the basement, a crack that could have been fixed for $500. But fixing it wouldn't let him tear down the whole block for his shopping center." Hannah's resolve wavered. She looked at Victor, searching his face for some sign that Mrs. Patterson was wrong, that there was more to the story. What she saw instead was a man who looked genuinely devastated by the pain he'd caused. "Mrs. Patterson," Victor said quietly, "I remember your house. The engineering report showed structural instability that went far beyond surface cracks. The foundation was shifting, the support beams were compromised." "Lies," Rodriguez interrupted. "Just like all your other excuses." "I have the reports," Victor said desperately. "Independent engineers, city inspectors." "Inspectors you probably paid off," someone called out. The accusations were flying faster now, and Hannah realized that nothing Victor could say would convince this crowd. They needed someone to blame for their losses, and he was the perfect target. "Enough," Hannah said loudly, surprising everyone including herself. "This isn't accomplishing anything." "Hannah, dear," Mrs. Patterson said gently, "you don't understand what this man has done." "I understand that people are hurt and angry," Hannah interrupted. "I understand that families have been displaced and lives have been disrupted. But I also understand that we're all trapped in here together, and turning this into a mob scene isn't going to solve anything." She looked around the circle of faces. People she'd known for years, customers she rang up every week, neighbors she genuinely cared about. And in the center, Victor Novak, looking more isolated and vulnerable than any billionaire should. "Whatever grievances you have with Mr. Novak," Hannah continued, "this isn't the time or place to resolve them. We're supposed to be taking care of each other tonight. Like he took care of us?" Rodriguez's voice was bitter. Hannah didn't have an answer for that, because the truth was, Victor hadn't taken care of them. Whatever his intentions, whatever legal justifications he had, the result was displacement and heartache for people she cared about. But she also couldn't forget the loneliness in his voice when he talked about shopping for groceries just to feel human, or the genuine concern in his eyes when he'd warned her about keeping his identity secret. The man at the center of this hostile crowd wasn't the cartoon villain these people needed him to be. He was something much more complicated. And Hannah was beginning to realize that her feelings about him were just as complicated. Have you ever found yourself caught between what you thought you knew about someone and what you were seeing with your own eyes? Sometimes the truth is more complex than we want it to be. You paid for my food, he said slowly, as if the words didn't make sense in any language he knew. Hannah was already helping the next customer, an elderly woman clutching a single prescription bottle and a can of soup. Mrs. Patterson, honey, how are you holding up in this storm? Oh, I'm fine, dear, the older woman replied, fumbling for exact change. Though I'm not sure how I'm getting home in this weather. Victor watched Hannah's face soften with genuine concern. Don't you worry about that. My shift ends in 20 minutes. I'll drive you home myself. But child, you already work so hard. Mrs. Patterson, my mama raised me right. Nobody drives in this storm alone if they don't have to. The exchange hit Victor like a physical blow. This woman wasn't just kind to him, an obvious outsider who could clearly afford his own groceries. She was like this with everyone. It wasn't charity or pity. It was simply who she was. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows with increasing ferocity. The lights flickered again, and several customers glanced nervously at the ceiling. Attention shoppers, came the manager's voice over the intercom. Due to the severe weather conditions and power grid instability, we're asking everyone to remain in the store until the storm passes. This is for your safety. We have emergency supplies and will keep you as comfortable as possible. A murmur of concern rippled through the store. Victor pulled out his phone, no signal. The storm had apparently knocked out the cell towers too. Looks like we're stuck, Hannah said, offering him that radiant smile that seemed to warm the entire store despite the power issues. I'm Hannah, by the way. Hannah West. Victor, he replied, his voice rough with an emotion he couldn't name. Victor Novak. Nice to meet you properly, Victor. She extended her hand for a formal handshake, and when their skin touched again, that same electric current passed between them. This time, neither pulled away immediately. You're not from here originally, Hannah observed, not making it sound like an accusation, just a gentle curiosity. Czech Republic, Victor confirmed, unconsciously standing straighter. Most Americans couldn't even pronounce his homeland correctly, let alone show genuine interest. I came here 22 years ago with nothing but determination and my mother's prayers. Something in his tone, pride mixed with old pain, made Hannah study his face more carefully. Beneath the expensive clothes and confident bearing, she glimpsed something she recognized. The look of someone who'd fought for everything they had. That must have taken incredible courage, she said softly, leaving everything you knew for something uncertain. Victor's throat tightened unexpectedly. When was the last time someone had acknowledged the fear that came with ambition? Sometimes courage is just having no other choice. The storm raged harder outside, but inside the store, something warm was building between the unlikely pair. Other stranded customers had settled into makeshift camps throughout the aisles, sharing snacks and stories. The emergency lighting created an oddly intimate atmosphere, like the whole world had shrunk down to just this moment, these people. I should help coordinate things, Hannah said, glancing around at the growing crowd of stranded shoppers. Mrs. Patterson looks worried, and there's a family with small children over by the pharmacy. Let me help, Victor offered without thinking. Hannah raised an eyebrow. You sure? Most people in suits like yours don't usually volunteer for customer service. This suit doesn't define who I am, Victor said, his accent giving the words extra weight. And perhaps it's time I remembered that. For the next hour, they worked together, organizing the impromptu shelter. Victor's natural leadership skills emerged as he helped coordinate food distribution and comfort arrangements, while Hannah's warmth and genuine care for others made even the most anxious customers feel secure. Watching her comfort a crying toddler, Victor felt something shift in his chest. Hannah didn't just serve people, she truly saw them. Every interaction was personal, meaningful. She remembered details about the regular customers, asked about their families, celebrated their small victories. You're very good at this, he observed as she successfully calmed the little boy with a simple game of peekaboo. At what? Caring. Making people feel. He struggled for the word in English. Valued. Important. Hannah smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. Everyone deserves to feel important, Victor. Some people just forget that when they get busy climbing ladders. The comment stung because it was true. When had he stopped seeing individuals and started seeing only obstacles or opportunities? I've forgotten many things, he admitted quietly. Coming here tonight, it wasn't even for food. I needed to get out of my apartment. Too many walls, too much silence. Hannah's expression softened with understanding. Loneliness is harder than hunger sometimes. Yes, Victor breathed, surprised by her insight. Exactly that. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the diverse group of storm refugees who'd found unexpected community in their shared predicament. A teenager was teaching card tricks to some elderly customers. A young mother was sharing her baby's formula with another family. Strangers were becoming friends out of simple human necessity. This is beautiful, Victor murmured, more to himself than to Hannah. What is this? He gestured around the store. In my world, people are so careful, so calculated. Everyone wants something, but here tonight, people are just being human, helping because they can, like you did for me. Hannah studied his profile, noting the genuine wonder in his voice. Your world sounds lonely. It is. The admission escaped before he could stop it. Very lonely. Another thunderclap shook the building, and the lights went out completely this time. Emergency lighting was their only illumination now, casting everything in that soft red glow that made conversations feel more intimate, more honest. Victor, Hannah said softly. What do you do? For work, I mean. He hesitated, suddenly afraid that the truth would change everything between them. In this dim light, with her kindness surrounding him like a warm blanket, he didn't want to be CEO Victor Novak. He just wanted to be Victor, the man who was learning to feel again. I build things, he said finally. Office buildings mostly, some residential developments. It wasn't a lie exactly. And in the emergency lighting, he couldn't see her expression clearly enough to know if she believed him. That sounds meaningful, Hannah said. Creating spaces where people work and live, that's important work. Victor almost laughed at the irony. When had anyone called his work meaningful? It was profitable, strategic, empire-building. But meaningful? That was a word he'd forgotten. What about you? He asked. Is this your career, or are you working toward something else? Hannah's smile turned wistful. I have a degree in social work, always wanted to help families in crisis, kids in the system. But life happened, and she gestured around the store. Bills don't pay themselves, and my daughter needs stability more than I need my dreams. You have a daughter? Destiny. She's 15. Hannah's voice filled with unmistakable love and pride. Smartest, strongest girl you've ever met. She's going to change the world someday. Victor felt his respect for Hannah deepen even further. Here was a woman sacrificing her own dreams to provide for her child. Yet she spoke of it without bitterness or self-pity. She's lucky to have you as her mother. I'm the lucky one, Hannah replied firmly. She reminds me every day what really matters. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the front of the store. A man in his 40s was arguing loudly with the manager about wanting to leave despite the storm. I don't care about your liability. I've got places to be. Sir, please understand, it's not safe. The man shoved past the manager, heading for the doors. Get out of my way. Victor moved instinctively, placing himself between the aggressive customer and Hannah. His body language shifted, becoming protective, commanding. The man asked you politely to wait. You will respect that. Who the hell are you? The customer snarled. Someone who understands that courtesy costs nothing, Victor replied calmly, his accent adding gravity to his words, and that sometimes we must think of others before ourselves. The man looked ready to escalate the confrontation, but something in Victor's steady gaze and composed strength made him reconsider. He muttered under his breath and stalked away to another part of the store. Victor turned back to find Hannah staring at him with a mixture of admiration and surprise. Thank you, she said softly. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Their eyes met and held in the dim light. Some things are worth protecting. The double meaning in his words wasn't lost on either of them. Hannah felt her heart skip as she realized this enigmatic man wasn't just talking about the general principle of protection. He was talking about her. Victor, I? Hannah, there you are. Mrs. Patterson approached them, interrupting the charged moment. "Dear, this storm is getting worse. Do you really think it's safe to drive me home tonight?" Hannah immediately shifted her attention to the older woman, but Victor noticed the slight tremor in her hands. Whether from the interrupted moment between them or genuine concern about the storm, he couldn't tell. "We'll figure something out, Mrs. Patterson. Don't you worry." Victor found himself speaking before he'd fully thought through the offer. "I have a car with all-weather capability. If the roads are passable when this passes, I can drive both of you home safely." Both women stared at him in surprise. "That's very kind," Hannah said carefully, "but we couldn't impose." "It's not an imposition," Victor interrupted gently. "It's neighbors helping neighbors. Isn't that what tonight has taught us?" Hannah bit her lip, clearly torn between accepting help and maintaining her fierce independence. Victor recognized the struggle. He'd fought similar battles with pride throughout his life. "Besides," he added with a slight smile, "you paid for my groceries. Perhaps this small favor could begin to balance the debt." "There's no debt," Hannah said firmly. "I told you that was just kindness." "Then let this be kindness too." Their gazes locked again, and Victor felt that strange warmth spreading through his chest. This woman challenged him in ways no boardroom adversary ever had. She made him want to be better, kinder, more human. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside Megamart, something beautiful was blooming between two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected place. Have you ever had a moment when a stranger's simple kindness completely changed your perspective on life? Sometimes the most powerful connections happen when we least expect them. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and the emergency lighting had created an almost magical atmosphere throughout the store. Victor found himself staying close to Hannah as she continued to care for the stranded customers, and he was amazed by her natural grace under pressure. "You should rest," he told her, after watching her spend 20 minutes helping an anxious mother calm her twin toddlers. "You've been working all day." "I'm fine," Hannah replied. But Victor noticed the exhaustion in her eyes. "These people They need you to take care of yourself too," Victor interrupted gently. "Even caregivers need care." Hannah paused in her constant motion, struck by his observation. When was the last time someone had worried about her well-being instead of just what she could do for them? "There's a break room in the back," she said finally. "Maybe we could sit for a few minutes." Victor nodded, following her past the pharmacy toward the employee area. The break room was small and utilitarian, but it felt like a private sanctuary compared to the bustling store. Hannah sank into one of the plastic chairs with a soft sigh, finally allowing herself to show her weariness. Victor studied her profile in the dim light, noting the elegant line of her neck, the way her natural curls caught what little illumination filtered in from the hallway. "Tell me about your daughter," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "Destiny." Hannah's face immediately brightened. "She's incredible. 15 going on 35, if you know what I mean. She wants to be a lawyer, says she's going to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. Like her mother does." Hannah looked up, surprised by the connection he'd made. "I work in a grocery store, Victor. I ring up items and bag groceries. Tonight I watched you comfort frightened children, organize emergency shelter, make sure an elderly woman felt safe, and coordinate food distribution for 50 strangers," Victor said firmly. "That's not just ringing up groceries. That's leadership. That's caring for your community." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes unexpectedly. "You make it sound more important than it is. Perhaps you make it sound less important than it is." Victor leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, does Destiny know how remarkable her mother is?" "She knows I work hard for her. That's enough." "Is it?" Victor's dark eyes were serious. "I think she should know that she comes from a woman who sees value in every person she meets, who pays for strangers' groceries and drives elderly neighbors home in storms, who sacrifices her own dreams so her child can achieve theirs." Hannah's breath caught. No one had ever described her life with such dignity before. Most people saw a single mother working double shifts at a grocery store. Victor saw something else entirely. "What about you?" she asked softly. "Do you have children?" Victor's expression grew distant. "No. My ex-fiancée wanted children eventually, but..." He trailed off. then straightened. She felt I was too focused on work, too unavailable emotionally. Was she right? The question should have offended him. Instead, Victor found himself considering it honestly. Probably. I built my business like I was still that terrified immigrant boy afraid someone would take it all away. I never learned how to stop building long enough to actually live. That sounds lonely. It was. Victor met her eyes. Until tonight, I didn't realize how lonely. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken understanding. Here were two people from completely different worlds, finding themselves drawn together by something deeper than circumstance. Victor. Hannah said carefully, I need to ask you something. He tensed, sensing the shift in her tone. Of course. When you said you build things, how big of things are we talking about? Victor's stomach dropped. He'd been dreading this moment when the fantasy of being just Victor would have to give way to the reality of being Victor Novak, CEO of Novak Industries. Hannah? Because Mrs. Patterson mentioned you looked familiar, and she's got a memory like a steel trap. Said you reminded her of that man who built the new community center downtown, the one who's been in the news for gentrifying neighborhoods and displacing families. Victor finished quietly. Yes, that would be me. Hannah sat back as if he'd physically pushed her. You're Victor Novak. The Victor Novak. I am. The billionaire who's been buying up properties in East Springfield and pushing out families who've lived there for generations. Victor winced. When she put it like that, he sounded like a villain from a movie. It's more complicated than... Is it? Hannah stood up abruptly, pacing to the small window. Because from where I sit, it looks pretty simple. Rich man comes in, buys up cheap property, forces out poor people, builds expensive condos for other rich people. That's not how I see it. Then how do you see it? Hannah turned to face him, and Victor was struck by the pain in her eyes. This wasn't abstract political debate for her. This was personal. I see neighborhoods that were dying, Victor said carefully. Empty lots filled with drug dealers, buildings so run down they were health hazards. I see investment bringing jobs, opportunities, hope. Whose hope? Hannah's voice was sharp now, because the families being forced out because they can't afford the new rent don't seem very hopeful. Victor felt his own defenses rising. I follow all laws, I give proper notice, I offer relocation assistance. Legal and moral aren't the same thing. Hannah's words cut deep. You can't just throw money at people and expect that to fix the lives you're disrupting. What would you have me do? Victor stood as well, his accent thickening with emotion. Leave the neighborhoods to rot? Let the crime and decay continue? I'd have you ask the people who live there what they need instead of deciding for them what's best. They stood facing each other across the small room, the warmth and connection of moments before replaced by the stark reality of their different worlds. Victor saw Hannah not just as the kind woman who'd paid for his groceries, but as someone directly affected by his business decisions. Hannah saw Victor not just as the lonely man seeking human connection, but as the face of gentrification that was threatening her community. My neighborhood is next, isn't it? Hannah asked quietly. The houses around Megamart, you've got plans for those too. Victor's silence was answer enough. I've lived there for 8 years, Hannah continued. Destiny's grown up there. It's not much, but it's home. It's where she learned to ride her bike, where the neighbors know her name, where Mrs. Patterson bakes cookies every Sunday for the kids on the block. Hannah, I never intended. What? To hurt anyone? Hannah laughed bitterly. That's the problem with people like you. You never intend to hurt anyone. You just never bother to think about who gets hurt when you get what you want. The accusation stung because it carried truth. Victor had always told himself that progress required sacrifice, that he was improving communities, not destroying them. But standing here facing Hannah, seeing the fear and anger in her eyes, he realized he'd never once asked himself whose sacrifice he was demanding. I should get back out there, Hannah said, moving toward the door. People are counting on me. Hannah, wait. Victor caught her arm gently, then immediately released it when she tensed. This doesn't have to change everything, doesn't it? She looked at him with something that might have been pity. You live in a world where $73 is pocket change. I live in a world where I have to choose between paying for your groceries or buying my daughter new shoes. You see investment opportunities. I see my home disappearing. Those things don't define who we are as people. Don't they? Don't they? Hannah paused at the door. Tell me, Victor, if you weren't rich, if you were just some immigrant construction worker struggling to make ends meet, would we be having this conversation? Would you have noticed me at all? The question hit like a physical blow because Victor couldn't honestly answer it. Would he have seen Hannah's kindness if she'd been another wealthy CEO? Would her grace and strength have stood out to him in a boardroom full of successful people? I want to believe I would have, he said quietly, but you're not sure. No, Victor admitted. I'm not sure. Hannah nodded as if his honesty confirmed something painful. At least you're honest about that. She left him standing in the break room, feeling more alone than he had in years. Outside, the storm was beginning to weaken, but inside Victor's chest, a different kind of tempest was building. For the first time in his adult life, Victor Novak was forced to confront the possibility that everything he'd built, all his success, all his achievements, might have been constructed on other people's foundations. And the woman who'd shown him a glimpse of what genuine human connection could feel like was paying the price for his ambition. The businessman in him wanted to rationalize, to justify, to explain why his actions were necessary for the greater good. But the man Hannah had awakened in him, the man who'd felt genuine warmth for the first time in years, was beginning to wonder if there might be a different way to build a life. A way that didn't require other people to lose theirs. The lights in the store flickered back to life just as the storm began to weaken outside. The sudden brightness felt jarring after hours in the emergency lighting, and Victor watched as the spell of intimacy that had settled over Megamart began to dissolve. Looks like the worst of it's over, Hannah said, but her voice carried a note of something that might have been disappointment. People will want to get home now. Victor nodded, though he found himself reluctant to see this strange evening end. About my offer to drive you and Mrs. Patterson home. I meant what I said about not owing me anything, Hannah interrupted quickly. You don't need to. Hannah. Victor's voice was quiet but firm. I want to help. Not because of obligation, but because. He paused, struggling to find words that wouldn't sound presumptuous. Because I'd like to make sure you get home safely. The sincerity in his tone made Hannah look at him more carefully. In the restored lighting, she could see the genuine concern in his dark eyes, the way he held himself like a man prepared to be rejected, but hoping he wouldn't be. Mr. Novak, she said, testing the formal distance. I appreciate the offer, but… Victor, he corrected softly. Please, after tonight, I think we're beyond formal titles. Hannah felt that dangerous warmth again. Victor, then, but I still can't accept. Why not? The simple question caught her off guard. Why couldn't she accept? Because he was Victor Novak, the man displacing her community? Because accepting help from him felt like a betrayal of her neighbors? Or because the way he looked at her made her feel she had no business feeling? It's complicated, she said finally. Most worthwhile things are. Before Hannah could respond, Mrs. Patterson appeared in the break room doorway. Hannah, honey, they're saying the roads are clear enough to drive now. Are you ready to head home? Victor stood immediately. Mrs. Patterson, I offered to drive you both home. My car can handle the wet roads better than most. The elderly woman studied Victor with sharp eyes, taking in his expensive clothes and confident bearing. That's very kind of you, young man, but I don't want to be a bother. No bother at all, Victor assured her. It would be my pleasure. Hannah watched the exchange, noting how Victor's demeanor softened when he spoke to Mrs. Patterson. There was genuine respect there, not the condescending attitude she might have expected from someone of his wealth and status. All right then, Mrs. Patterson said finally. Hannah, if you're comfortable with it, I'd appreciate the ride. My old bones aren't as eager to drive in this weather as they used to be. Hannah found herself nodding before she'd fully made the decision. Okay. Thank you, Victor. 20 minutes later, they were walking through the nearly empty parking lot toward Victor's car. Hannah wasn't surprised to see it was a sleek black SUV that probably cost more than she made in 3 years, but she was surprised by how understated it was. No flashy chrome or ostentatious details, just elegant, functional luxury. Victor opened the passenger door for Mrs. Patterson, helping her settle comfortably before moving to open the back door for Hannah. The gesture was automatic, courteous, but Hannah noticed the way his hand briefly touched her elbow as she climbed in, a gentle contact that sent an unexpected shiver through her. The drive to Mrs. Patterson's apartment complex was quiet, filled with the soft sounds of the car's excellent sound system playing classical music and the occasional direction from Mrs. Patterson. Victor drove with the same careful competence he seemed to bring to everything else. His attention focused on the wet roads, but his gaze occasionally finding Hannah's in the rearview mirror. When they reached Mrs. Patterson's building, Victor insisted on walking her to her door despite her protests that it wasn't necessary. Hannah watched from the car as he offered Mrs. Patterson his arm, matching his pace to her slower one, waiting patiently while she fumbled for her keys. "Such a nice young man," Mrs. Patterson said when Victor returned to the car. "Very polite. Where did you say you work, dear?" "Construction," Victor replied easily. "Development projects mostly." Hannah caught the careful way he phrased it, not technically a lie, but not the whole truth either. She understood why he wasn't revealing his identity to Mrs. Patterson, but the deception still made her uncomfortable. "Well, you drive safely now?" Mrs. Patterson said as Victor helped her out of the car again. "And Hannah, you get some rest. You work too hard." "Yes, ma'am," Hannah replied, accepting the older woman's quick hug through the open car door. As they drove away from Mrs. Patterson's building, the car felt suddenly smaller with just the two of them. Hannah was acutely aware of Victor's presence in the driver's seat, the way his hands moved confidently on the steering wheel, the subtle scent of his cologne mixing with the leather interior. "Your address?" Victor asked quietly. Hannah gave him directions to her neighborhood, then settled back in the comfortable seat. The events of the evening felt surreal now. Had she really spent hours talking with Victor Novak? Had he really protected her from the angry crowd at the store? "Thank you," she said as they drove through the quiet streets. "For tonight, for Mrs. Patterson, for everything." "Thank you," Victor replied, "for paying for my groceries, for defending me when you had every reason not to." Or, he paused, then continued more quietly, "for treating me like a human being instead of a symbol." Hannah studied his profile in the dashboard lights. "Is that how people usually treat you? Like a symbol?" "Usually." Victor's smile was rueful. "Either they want something from me or they want to destroy me. Very few people just want to understand me." "And what do I want?" Victor glanced at her in the mirror again, and Hannah felt her breath catch at the intensity in his eyes. "I think you're still deciding." They were entering Hannah's neighborhood now, modest houses with small front yards, older cars parked on the street, the kind of working-class community that Victor's developments typically targeted for improvement. Hannah watched his face carefully, wondering what he saw when he looked at her world. "It's a nice neighborhood," Victor said, and he sounded sincere. "Good bones in these houses, strong community feeling." "For now," Hannah said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Until someone decides it needs improving." Victor was quiet for a moment. "Hannah, about what you learned tonight, about who I am, I want you to know that I never meant for people to be hurt by my projects." "Intent and impact are different things," Hannah replied, echoing Mrs. Patterson's earlier words. "Yes," Victor agreed quietly, "I'm learning that." They'd reached Hannah's street now, and she directed him to her small house. It was modest but well-maintained, with a tiny front garden and a porch light that cast a warm glow over the entrance. Victor pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine, and for a moment they sat in silence. "I had a good time tonight," Victor said finally, and the simple honesty in his voice surprised them both. "Despite everything, the storm, the confrontation, the complications, I enjoyed talking with you." Hannah felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. "I did too," she admitted, "which probably makes me a terrible person considering." "Considering what?" "Considering that you represent everything that's threatening my daughter's stability. Her school, her friends, her home, all of it could disappear because of decisions you make in boardrooms I'll never see." Victor turned in his seat to face her fully, and Hannah was struck by the pain in his expression. "I know," he said quietly, "and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that my business decisions have created fear for families like yours. I'm sorry that I never considered the human cost of what I call progress. Are you sorry enough to change? The question hung in the air between them. Victor looked at her for a long moment, and Hannah could see him wrestling with something internal. I don't know, he said finally. I don't know if I'm strong enough to change everything I've built, but I know that meeting you has made me want to try. Hannah felt tears prick her eyes unexpectedly. That's not enough, Victor. Wanting to try isn't the same as actually doing it. No, he agreed. It's not. But it's a beginning. They sat in silence again, both aware that this moment was a crossroads. Hannah could get out of the car now, go into her house, and try to forget this complicated man who'd awakened feelings she'd thought were long dead. Or she could take a risk that might break her heart, but might also change everything. I should go in, she said finally. Destiny will be worried if I'm much later. Of course. Victor moved to get out of the car, but Hannah stopped him. You don't need to walk me to the door. I want to. Victor, please. His voice was soft but insistent. Let me be a gentleman, even if I haven't been a good man. Hannah nodded, and Victor came around to open her door. As she stepped out of the car, she found herself standing very close to him, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the vulnerability he usually kept hidden. Thank you for the ride, she said quietly. Thank you for the evening. They walked up the short path to her front door, their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. Hannah fumbled for her keys, suddenly nervous in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour or the events of the evening. Hannah, Victor said as she found the right key. Yes? I know this is impossible. I know we're from different worlds, that my presence in your life could only cause complications. Victor stepped closer, and Hannah could feel the warmth radiating from his body. But I can't stop thinking about what you said tonight. About choosing between helping someone who needs it and standing by your principles. What about it? You chose to help, Victor said softly. Even when it went against everything you believed about me, even when it put you at odds with your community. You chose kindness over judgment. Hannah felt her resolve wavering. I don't know if it was kindness or stupidity. It was courage, Victor said firmly, and it made me want to be worthy of it. Hannah looked up at him, standing on her front porch in his expensive suit, this powerful man who seemed suddenly vulnerable and uncertain. Victor, I know I have no right to ask, he continued quickly, but could I see you again? Not as Victor Novak, the developer, but as Victor, the man who met an extraordinary woman in a grocery store during a storm? Hannah's heart was beating so fast she was sure he could hear it. I don't think that's possible. You can't separate yourself from what you do. Maybe not, Victor agreed, but I could try to change what I do. For me, for you, for your daughter, for Mrs. Patterson, and all the other people I've hurt without meaning to. Victor's voice grew more intense. For myself, because I don't want to be the kind of man who destroys communities anymore. Hannah searched his face for signs of manipulation, for the calculating businessman she knew he must be. What she found instead was a man who looked like he was standing on the edge of a precipice, waiting for her to either save him or let him fall. I can't promise anything, she said finally. I can't promise to trust you, or to believe that you'll change, or to risk my daughter's security, for whatever this is between us. I'm not asking for promises, Victor said quietly. I'm asking for a chance to prove that the man you met tonight is real. Hannah bit her lip, torn between the sensible voice in her head telling her to walk away and the deeper instinct that whispered this man might be worth the risk. One coffee, she said finally, somewhere public, during the day. And if you do anything that makes me think you're not serious about changing, it's over. Victor's face lit up with a smile that transformed his entire appearance. One coffee, he agreed. When? Sunday afternoon. There's a cafe downtown called Marlene's, 2:00. I'll be there. Hannah nodded and turned toward her door, but Victor's voice stopped her again. Hannah? Yes? Thank you for giving me hope. Hannah looked back at him one more time. This complicated man who'd somehow managed to crack open her carefully guarded heart in the space of a single evening. Don't make me regret it, Victor. I won't, he promised. I swear to you, I won't. Hannah unlocked her door and stepped inside, turning to watch Victor walk back to his car. As he drove away, she stood in her doorway, feeling like her entire world had shifted on its axis. 6 hours ago, she'd been a grocery store cashier looking forward to getting home and collapsing into bed. Now, she was a woman who'd agreed to have coffee with a billionaire who might be either her salvation or her destruction. The only thing she knew for certain was that Victor Novak had awakened something in her that she'd thought was gone forever. The question was whether she was brave enough to see where it led. Sunday afternoon arrived gray and drizzly, with the kind of persistent mist that made everything look softer around the edges. Hannah stood in front of her bedroom mirror for the third time, changing from jeans to a simple dress and back to jeans again. Nothing felt right for coffee with a billionaire who might be trying to redeem himself or might be playing an elaborate game she couldn't understand. "Mom, you're being weird," Destiny observed from the doorway, her 15-year-old voice carrying that particular blend of affection and exasperation that only teenagers could master. "Since when do you care this much about coffee with a friend?" Hannah paused in her wardrobe crisis. She hadn't told Destiny exactly who she was meeting, only that she had plans with someone she'd met during the storm. "I just want to look presentable." "You always look presentable," Destiny said, flopping onto the bed. "But you're acting like this is a date or something." The word date hit Hannah like a small electric shock. Was that what this was? She'd been carefully avoiding that label in her own mind, telling herself it was just coffee, just conversation, just giving someone a chance to explain themselves. "It's not a date," Hannah said firmly, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince. "Uh-huh." Destiny's knowing smile was far too mature for 15. "Well, whoever this mysterious friend is, wear the blue sweater. It brings out your eyes." Hannah looked at her daughter, this brilliant, beautiful girl who was her entire world, and felt a pang of guilt. Was she being selfish, pursuing this complicated connection with Victor when it could potentially threaten their stability? "Destiny," Hannah said carefully, "you know I'd never do anything that would put you at risk, right?" "Mom, where's this coming from?" Destiny sat up, her expression shifting to concern. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Hannah assured her quickly. Sometimes I worry that I get so focused on work and bills that I forget to really live. And I don't want you to think that's the only way to be." "Are you kidding me?" Destiny's voice was incredulous. "Mom, you're the strongest person I know. You work 2 jobs, you volunteer at the food bank, you help Mrs. Patterson with her groceries every week, and you still manage to be here for every important moment in my life. If that's not really living, I don't know what is." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," Destiny said simply. "Now go have coffee with your mysterious friend and stop overthinking everything. You deserve some happiness, Mom." 40 minutes later, Hannah pushed open the door to Marlene's cafe, her heart racing despite her efforts to stay calm. The small coffee shop was bustling with Sunday afternoon customers, the air filled with the rich scent of espresso and the warm hum of conversation. She spotted Victor immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, and the sight of him made her breath catch. Gone was the expensive suit from their first meeting. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that somehow made him look younger, more approachable. But it was the way he stood when he saw her, the genuine smile that transformed his entire face, that made Hannah's carefully constructed walls tremble. "Hannah," he said as she approached, and her name sounded different in his accent when he wasn't stressed or angry, warmer, more intimate. "Thank you for coming." "I said I would," Hannah replied, settling into the chair across from him. The table was small enough that their knees almost touched, creating an intimacy that felt both dangerous and electric. "What would you like?" Victor asked. "Coffee, tea, something to eat?" "Just coffee, black." Victor raised an eyebrow. "No cream? No sugar? Nothing to soften it?" "I like things straightforward," Hannah said, meeting his eyes directly. "No unnecessary complications." "Point taken," Victor said with a rueful smile. "Though I have to admit, some of life's best experiences come with complications." He went to order their drinks, and Hannah watched him interact with the young barista. Victor was polite, patient when the girl seemed starstruck by his presence, and he tipped generously without making a show of it. Small details, but they mattered to Hannah. In her experience, how people treated service workers revealed their true character. "So," Hannah said when he returned with their coffee, "tell me why you really wanted to meet today." Victor wrapped his hands around his mug, and Hannah noticed the faint calluses on his palms, evidence of manual labor that surprised her. "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about Thursday night, about what you said, about the choice between helping someone and standing by your principles. And I realized I've been making the wrong choice for years." Victor's voice was quiet but intense. "I've been standing by my principles, profit, efficiency, progress, without considering who I was hurting in the process." Hannah studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculated charm. What she found instead was a man who looked genuinely troubled by his own realizations. "That's a pretty admission," she said carefully. "But talk is easy. What are you actually going to do about it?" Victor reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder, placing it on the table between them. "I want to show you something." Hannah looked at the folder suspiciously. "What is it?" "Open it." Hannah hesitated, then flipped open the folder. Inside were architectural plans, legal documents, and what looked like financial projections. She skimmed the first page, her eyes widening as she began to understand what she was looking at. "This is your current development project," she said slowly. "The one in my neighborhood." "Yes." "And these new plans." Hannah looked up at him in confusion. "These show affordable housing units mixed in with the market-rate condos, community spaces, retention of existing businesses." "I spent all day Friday and yesterday working with my architects and planners," Victor said, "redesigning the entire project to preserve the community character while still improving the infrastructure." Hannah stared at the documents, then back at Victor. "This would cost you millions more than your original plan." "Yes. And reduce your profit margin significantly." "Yes. Why?" Hannah's voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you do this?" Victor leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "Because Thursday night, a woman paid for my groceries and asked for nothing in return. Because she defended me when I didn't deserve it. Because she made me remember that behind every development project are real people with real lives." He paused, his voice growing softer. "Because she made me want to be worthy of her kindness." Hannah felt her heart do something complicated and dangerous in her chest. "Victor, I'm not doing this to impress you," he said quickly. "I'm doing it because it's right. Because Mrs. Patterson shouldn't have to lose her community along with her house. Because families like yours shouldn't have to choose between stability and gentrification." Hannah looked down at the plans again, noting the careful attention to detail, the obvious hours of work that had gone into completely reimagining the project. This wasn't a quick fix or a publicity stunt. This was a fundamental shift in how Victor approached development. "Your investors will hate this," she observed. "Some of them, yes. Others might surprise me." Victor's smile was wry. "And if they don't like it, they can find a new developer. I'm done building my empire on other people's foundations." Hannah felt tears threaten again. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Victor's gesture settling between them. Hannah realized that this was more than just revised building plans. This was Victor choosing to tear down everything he'd built his identity around and rebuild it according to new principles. "There's something else," Victor said quietly. "Something I need to tell you before this goes any further." Hannah's stomach tightened. "What?" "Thursday night, when I warned you about keeping my identity secret, about people who might use you to get to me, that wasn't just paranoia." Victor's voice dropped even lower. "There have been credible threats against me. People who blame me for various developments, various displacement. My security team has identified at least 3 separate groups who might attempt to hurt me or people close to me." Hannah felt the blood drain from her face. "What kind of threats?" "The kind that made my head of security insist I vary my routines, avoid predictable patterns, the kind that made coming to Megamart that night a calculated risk." Victor's eyes were serious, pained. "I'm telling you this because if we continue seeing each other, if whatever this is between us develops further, you could become a target." Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest about the risks, Victor said firmly. You have a daughter to think about. I won't have your family's safety threatened because of my feelings for you. The word feelings hung in the air between them, and Hannah felt her heart skip. Your feelings? Victor looked at her steadily. Hannah, I'm 45 years old. I've had relationships, even an engagement, but I've never felt about anyone the way I felt about you Thursday night, the way I feel about you right now. Hannah's mouth went dry. Victor, I know it's impossible, he continued. I know we're from different worlds, that my past actions have hurt your community, that being with me could complicate your life in ways I can't even predict. But I also know that you've awakened something in me that I thought was dead. Hannah stared at him, seeing the vulnerability in his expression, the way he was laying his heart bare, despite knowing she might reject him. What are you asking me? I'm asking if you feel it too. Victor said quietly. This connection between us, this sense that maybe, despite all the logical reasons we shouldn't, we're meant to find each other. Hannah's breath caught. She did feel it, that inexplicable pull toward this complicated man who represented everything that threatened her world, but who had also shown her glimpses of something she'd stopped believing in. I feel it, she admitted, her voice barely audible, and it terrifies me. Victor reached across the small table and covered her hand with his. The touch sent electricity up her arm, and Hannah had to resist the urge to either pull away or lean closer. It terrifies me too, he said, but maybe that's how we know it's real. Hannah looked down at their joined hands, his larger, slightly rough from work despite his wealth, hers smaller but strong from years of physical labor. The contrast should have highlighted their differences, but instead it seemed to emphasize how well they fit together. If we do this, Hannah said slowly, if we explore whatever this is, there have to be rules. What kind of rules? Honesty, complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Hannah met his eyes. No more carefully worded half-truths or convenient omissions. Agreed. And my daughter's safety comes first, always. If there's ever a situation where being with you puts her at risk, it ends immediately, Victor finished. Hannah, I would never ask you to choose between your child's welfare and a relationship with me. Never. Hannah nodded, feeling some of her tension ease. And we take this slowly. I don't know how to navigate dating a billionaire, and I won't pretend otherwise. We take it as slowly as you need, Victor assured her. I'm not going anywhere. They sat quietly for a moment, their hands still touching across the table. Hannah could feel the curious glances from other cafe patrons, and she wondered if any of them recognized Victor, if their picture might end up on social media or in gossip columns. As if reading her thoughts, Victor squeezed her hand gently. Are you okay with people seeing us together? I don't know, Hannah said honestly. I've never dated anyone famous before. I'm not famous, Victor protested. I'm just well known in certain business circles. Hannah laughed, and the sound seemed to release some of the tension between them. Victor, you've been on the cover of 3 magazines this year. You're famous. Point taken. Victor's smile was rueful. We can be more discreet if you prefer. Private dinners, less public venues. I don't want to hide, Hannah said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. If we're doing this, we're doing it honestly, which means not being ashamed of being seen together. Victor's smile grew warmer. You're remarkable. Do you know that? I'm terrified, Hannah corrected. But my daughter taught me something recently. She said I deserve some happiness. Maybe it's time I started believing that. Maybe it is, Victor agreed softly. They talked for another hour, the conversation ranging from serious discussions about Victor's business changes to lighter topics like favorite books and travel dreams. Hannah found herself relaxing despite her nerves, charmed by Victor's dry humor and impressed by his thoughtful responses to her questions. When they finally prepared to leave, Victor walked her to her car in the cafe's small parking lot. The afternoon had grown cooler, and Hannah shivered slightly in the autumn air. Thank you for today, Victor said as they reached her car. For giving me a chance to explain, to show you that I'm serious about changing. Thank you for the new development plans, Hannah replied. For proving that change is possible. They stood facing each other beside her car, the space between them charged with unspoken possibility. Victor reached out slowly, giving Hannah time to pull away if she wanted to, and tucked a stray curl behind her ear. The gentle touch made her shiver again, but not from the cold. "When can I see you again?" Victor asked quietly. "I don't know," Hannah said honestly. "I need to think about all of this, figure out how to explain it to Destiny." "Of course." Victor stepped back, giving her space. "Take all the time you need. But Hannah?" "Yes?" "Whatever you decide, know that meeting you has already changed me in ways I can't undo. Whether we have a future together or not, you've made me a better man." Hannah felt tears threaten again at the simple sincerity in his voice. Victor. Before she could finish the thought, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and frowned. "Everything okay?" Victor asked, noting her expression. "It's from my neighbor," Hannah said, her voice tight with concern. "She says there are news vans on my street, reporters asking questions about me." Victor's face went pale. "Oh God, Hannah, I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid of." Hannah looked up at him, fear and anger warring in her expression. "How did they find out about me so quickly?" "Someone at the cafe must have recognized me and posted about it online," Victor said grimly. "Or maybe they've been following me as part of investigating the threats." He ran a hand through his hair, his accent thickening with stress. "I should have been more careful. I should have suggested somewhere more private." Hannah's phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Destiny. She answered immediately. "Mom, there are reporters outside our house asking about you and some billionaire guy. Mrs. Chen from next door won't let them near the door, but they're not leaving." Destiny's voice was confused and slightly frightened. "What's going on?" Hannah closed her eyes, feeling her carefully ordered world beginning to crumble. "I'm on my way home, sweetheart. Stay inside and don't answer the door for anyone." "Mom, are you in some kind of trouble?" "No, baby. It's just complicated. I'll explain everything when I get there." Hannah ended the call and looked at Victor, who was watching her with an expression of anguish and guilt. "I have to go," she said simply. "Hannah, let me help. I can call my security team, have them clear the reporters." "No." Hannah's voice was firm. "That would just confirm whatever story they're trying to write. I need to handle this myself." "But this is exactly what I was afraid of," Hannah interrupted, her fear manifesting as anger. "One coffee date and suddenly my daughter is being frightened by reporters in our own neighborhood." Victor flinched as if she'd struck him. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Hannah started to get into her car, then paused. "Victor, I need you to understand something. My daughter's peace of mind is worth more to me than any feelings I might have for you. If this media attention doesn't stop." "It will," Victor said desperately. "I'll make sure it stops. I'll issue a statement, redirect their attention, whatever it takes." Hannah looked at him for a long moment, seeing the genuine distress in his eyes, the way he was already reaching for his phone to start making calls. Part of her wanted to comfort him, to tell him it would be okay. But the larger part, the mother part, was focused entirely on getting home to her daughter. "I hope so," she said quietly, "because if it doesn't, this ends before it really begins." She drove away, leaving Victor standing alone in the parking lot, watching the car that carried both his hope and his heart disappear into the gray afternoon. Hannah's hands trembled as she turned onto her street, and her heart sank at the sight that greeted her. 3 news vans were parked along the curb, their satellite dishes extended like mechanical flowers reaching toward the sky. Reporters and cameramen clustered on the sidewalk, and she could see neighbors peering out from behind curtains, their curiosity and concern evident even from a distance. Mrs. Chen stood guard on Hannah's front porch like a fierce sentinel, her small frame somehow managing to look formidable as she blocked the reporter's access to the door. When she spotted Hannah's car, she waved frantically and began shouting at the media crowd in rapid-fire Cantonese that needed no translation. Hannah parked in her driveway and took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was about to happen. The moment she stepped out of her car, the reporters surged forward like a tide. Miss West, can you confirm your relationship with Victor Novak?" "How long have you been dating the Novak Industries CEO? What's your response to allegations that you're involved with the man responsible for displacing families in this neighborhood?" The questions came fast and overlapping, microphones thrust toward her face as cameras clicked and rolled. Hannah kept her head down and pushed through the crowd, grateful for Mrs. Chen's protective presence as she made it to her front door. "No comment," she said firmly, fumbling for her keys. "Please respect my family's privacy." "Miss West, residents are calling your relationship a betrayal of the community." Hannah whirled around, her patience finally snapping. "My personal life is not up for community debate. Now please leave my property." She managed to get inside and lock the door, her hands shaking with adrenaline and anger. Destiny appeared immediately, wrapping her arms around her mother with unusual vulnerability. "Mom, what is all this? Who is Victor Novak, and why do they think you're dating him?" Hannah held her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, trying to center herself. Through the front window, she could see the reporters hadn't left, and some were setting up what looked like longer-term equipment. "Sit down, sweetheart," Hannah said gently, leading Destiny to the couch. "I need to tell you something important." For the next 20 minutes, Hannah explained everything. The storm, meeting Victor, discovering his identity, the coffee date, and the complicated feelings she was trying to navigate. Destiny listened with the serious attention she brought to all important conversations, asking thoughtful questions and processing each revelation. "So he's the developer everyone's been angry about," Destiny said finally. "The one displacing families." "Yes. But he's also shown me development plans that would preserve our community while improving it. He's trying to change his approach." "And you believe him?" Hannah considered the question carefully. "I think I'm starting to, but that doesn't mean it's not complicated." Destiny was quiet for a moment, then looked at her mother with eyes that seemed far too mature for 15. "Mom, are you falling for him?" The direct question caught Hannah off guard. "Destiny, because if you are, that's okay. You deserve to have someone special in your life. But I need to know what this means for us." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes at her daughter's matter-of-fact acceptance and concern. "I don't know what it means yet, baby. I'm still figuring it out." "Well, figure it out fast," Destiny said, gesturing toward the window where camera flashes were still visible. "Because this media circus isn't exactly low-key." As if summoned by her words, Hannah's phone rang. Victor's name appeared on the screen, and she answered immediately. "Hannah, I am so sorry." Victor's voice was tight with stress and guilt. "I've already spoken with my publicity team and my security head. They're working to redirect media attention away from you." "How?" Hannah asked, sinking into a chair. "The damage is already done. My neighbors are staring, my daughter is scared, and I can't even leave my own house. I'm issuing a statement in 30 minutes clarifying that we met by chance during the storm, and that any speculation about a romantic relationship is premature and invasive," Victor said quickly. "I'm also announcing the revised development plans for your neighborhood. That should shift focus to the business story." Hannah felt a flicker of hope. "You think that will work?" "I think it will help. But Hannah, there's something else. My security team has identified who leaked the story." "Who?" Victor's voice turned grim. "Someone photographed us at the cafe and sold the pictures to a gossip blog. But it wasn't a random paparazzi. It was someone who's been specifically watching me, documenting my movements." Hannah's blood went cold. "Someone connected to the threats you mentioned?" "Possibly. My team is investigating, but in the meantime, I've arranged for additional security in your neighborhood. Discreet officers who will blend in but keep watch." "Victor, no." "Hannah, please. I can't undo the media attention, but I can make sure you and Destiny are safe while we figure this out." Hannah looked at her daughter, who was clearly listening to every word despite pretending to scroll through her phone. The thought of Destiny being in danger because of Hannah's choices made her feel physically ill. "Okay," she said quietly. "But if this gets worse?" "It won't," Victor said firmly. "I promise you, it won't." The next few hours passed in a surreal blur. Victor's statement was released, and while it didn't make the reporters disappear entirely, it did reduce their intensity. The business angle of the story, Victor Novak's surprising pivot toward community-focused development, began to overshadow the personal speculation. By evening, only one news van remained, and Hannah finally felt safe enough to open her blinds. She was making dinner when her phone buzzed with a text from Victor. "How are you holding up?" Hannah stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Surviving. Thank you for the statement. Can I call you later, when things are quieter?" Hannah glanced at Destiny, who was doing homework at the kitchen table, but clearly still processing the day's events. "Not tonight. I need to focus on my daughter." "Of course, tomorrow?" Hannah hesitated, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. The smart thing would be to end this now, before it got more complicated. But when she closed her eyes, she could still feel the warmth of Victor's hand covering hers, still hear the sincerity in his voice when he talked about changing. "Tomorrow," she typed back. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Hannah was getting ready for work when she heard voices on her front porch. Not the aggressive tones of reporters, but something quieter, more familiar. She peered through the peephole and saw Mrs. Patterson standing with two other women from the neighborhood. Hannah opened the door cautiously. "Mrs. Patterson? Is everything okay?" "Hannah, dear, we need to talk," the older woman said gently. "May we come in?" Hannah let them into her living room, noting the serious expressions on all three faces. These were women she'd known for years, neighbors who'd become friends, and their presence felt more intimidating than the reporters had. "We saw the news," Mrs. Patterson began without preamble, "about you and Victor Novak." "Mrs. Patterson?" "Child, let me finish." The older woman's voice was kind but firm. "We're not here to judge you. We're here because we're concerned." "Concerned about what?" "About you getting hurt," said Maria Santos, who lived 2 streets over. "Men like that, they don't understand what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. They can afford to play games that cost us everything." "I'm not playing games," Hannah said quietly, "and neither is he." "How can you be sure?" asked the third woman, Janet Mills, whose family had been displaced by one of Victor's earlier projects. "Hannah, I've seen the way these developers operate. They promise change, they make grand gestures, but when it comes down to profit versus people, they choose profit every time." Hannah felt her defenses rising, but she forced herself to listen. These women had every right to their skepticism, and their concern for her was genuine. "I know you think you know him," Mrs. Patterson continued, "but honey, you met him one time during a storm and had coffee with him once. That's not enough to judge someone's character." "Actually," Hannah said carefully, "it's more complicated than that." She found herself telling them about the revised development plans, about Victor's commitment to preserving the community while improving infrastructure. She watched their faces carefully, seeing surprise, skepticism, and cautious hope war in their expressions. "You've seen these plans yourself?" Maria asked. "Yes. They're detailed, professional, and they address the concerns people have raised about displacement. Plans can be changed," Janet pointed out. "Promises can be broken." "Yes," Hannah agreed. "They can, but they can also be kept." Mrs. Patterson studied Hannah's face with sharp eyes. "You care about him." It wasn't a question, and Hannah didn't try to deny it. "I'm starting to, yes. And he cares about you? I think so." Mrs. Patterson sighed deeply. "Hannah, I've lived through enough to know that love can make people do foolish things. But I've also lived through enough to know that sometimes love can make people do extraordinary things." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if this man is serious about changing how he does business, if he's serious about protecting our community instead of destroying it, then maybe he's worth the risk." Mrs. Patterson's voice grew stern. "But if he hurts you, if he breaks promises to you or to this neighborhood, he'll have to answer to all of us." Hannah felt a rush of warmth for these women who'd become her chosen family. "I understand." "Do you?" Maria asked seriously. "Because dating a billionaire isn't like dating a regular person. There will be media attention, social pressure, people trying to use you to get to him. Are you prepared for that?" Hannah thought about the reporters, about Destiny's fear, about the way her quiet life had been turned upside down in the span of one afternoon. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I think I want to find out." The women exchanged glances, then Mrs. Patterson stood and hugged Hannah tightly. "Then you have our support, child, but you also have our protection. If he steps out of line, you tell us." After they left, Hannah sat in her quiet house feeling both supported and terrified. She was getting ready to leave for work when her phone rang. Victor's name on the screen made her heart skip. "Good morning," she said, surprised by how glad she was to hear from him. "Good morning. I hope I'm not calling too early." "Not at all. I was just about to leave for work." There was a pause, then Victor said carefully, "Hannah, I know yesterday was overwhelming. If you need space, if you want to step back from this—" "Do you want me to step back?" Hannah interrupted. "No," Victor said immediately. "God, no, but I want you to feel safe making whatever choice is right for you and Destiny." Hannah found herself smiling despite everything. "What if the choice I want to make is to see you again?" Victor's relief was audible. "Then I would be very grateful." "But not today," Hannah continued. "I need to work, and I think we both need to let the media attention die down a bit more." "Of course. When?" Hannah considered. "Friday. Dinner. Somewhere quiet where we can actually talk without photographers." "I know a place," Victor said. "It's a small restaurant in the Arts District, family-owned, very private, excellent food." "Victor?" "Yes? No photographers, no social media posts, no publicity stunts, just us." "Just us," Victor agreed softly. "I promise." The rest of the week passed in a strange suspension of normalcy. The media attention gradually faded as other stories took precedence, though Hannah still noticed the occasional long-lens camera or unfamiliar car on her street. Victor's discreet security presence became apparent. A maintenance worker who spent an unusually long time fixing the streetlight, a jogger who appeared at predictable times, small signs that someone was watching out for them. Destiny adapted to the situation with the resilience of youth, though Hannah caught her daughter researching Victor online and reading articles about his business practices. "Find anything interesting?" Hannah asked Thursday evening, settling beside Destiny on the couch. "He's more complicated than I expected," Destiny said, showing Hannah an article about Victor's charitable foundation. "Did you know he funds scholarships for immigrant kids? And look at this. He personally paid for the rebuilding of a community center that was damaged in a flood last year." Hannah studied the article, noting the date. This wasn't recent publicity designed to improve his image. These were ongoing commitments that predated their meeting. "He doesn't talk about this stuff," Hannah observed. "That's what's interesting," Destiny said. "Most rich people make sure everyone knows about their charity work. He seems to actually try to keep it quiet." "What do you think that means?" Destiny looked at her mother with eyes that held wisdom beyond her years. "I think it means he might actually be a good person who's made some bad choices. And if that's true, then maybe he's worth the risk." Friday evening arrived, gray and cool, with the first real hint of autumn in the air. Hannah stood in front of her closet, feeling the same wardrobe uncertainty she'd experienced before their coffee date, but this time, Destiny was there to help. "Definitely, the black dress," Destiny said decisively. "It's elegant, but not too dressy. You look beautiful in it. You don't think it's too much for dinner?" "Mom, you're having dinner with a billionaire. I think a black dress is appropriate." Hannah slipped into the dress, a simple but flattering piece she'd bought for a work function the previous year. It hugged her curves without being too revealing, and the color made her skin glow. "Perfect," Destiny declared. "Now, do you have your pepper spray?" Hannah paused in applying lipstick. "Destiny." "Mom, I'm serious. I've been reading about this guy, and while he seems okay, he's still incredibly powerful, and we don't really know him yet. Promise me you'll be careful." Hannah felt a surge of pride for her daughter's practical wisdom. "I promise, and I'll text you when I get there and when I'm leaving." "Good. And if he turns out to be a creep, call me immediately, and I'll sick Mrs. Chen on him." Hannah laughed, pulling her daughter into a hug. "What did I do to deserve you? You raised me right," Destiny said simply. "Now go find out if this guy is worth all the drama he's brought into our lives." An hour later, Hannah stood outside Rosina's, a small Italian restaurant tucked between an art gallery and a vintage bookstore. The place was exactly as Victor had described: intimate, family-owned, with warm lighting spilling from windows that revealed cozy tables and walls lined with local artwork. Victor was waiting for her just inside the door, and the sight of him took her breath away. He wore a dark suit that was clearly expensive but understated, and his face lit up with genuine pleasure when he saw her. "Hannah," he said, his accent making her name sound like music. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, accepting the light kiss he pressed to her cheek. The gesture was European, sophisticated, and it sent a shiver of awareness through her. "Table for two?" the hostess asked with a knowing smile, leading them to a corner booth that offered both intimacy and privacy. The first few minutes were slightly awkward as they settled into the rhythm of being together again. But as they ordered wine and began talking, the easy connection from their previous meetings reasserted itself. "How has Destiny been handling everything?" Victor asked after they'd placed their dinner orders. "Better than I expected," Hannah said. "She's been researching you online." Victor's expression grew concerned. "What did she find?" "Your scholarship program, the community center rebuilding, various charitable commitments that you don't seem to publicize much." Victor shifted uncomfortably. "Those things aren't public relations efforts." "I know." That's what impressed her. Hannah leaned forward slightly. "Why don't you talk about your charitable work?" "Because it's not charity," Victor said simply. "It's responsibility. When you have resources that others need, using those resources to help isn't something to be praised. It's just what you should do." Hannah studied his face, noting the sincerity in his expression. Not everyone sees it that way. "Then not everyone was raised by a woman who worked 3 jobs to keep her son in school," Victor replied. "My mother taught me that privilege without purpose is just selfishness with better clothes." The comment revealed more about Victor's background than anything he'd shared before, and Hannah found herself wanting to know more about the immigrant boy who'd become a billionaire. "Tell me about your mother," she said gently. Victor's expression softened. "Elena Novak, strongest woman I've ever known. She came to this country speaking no English, with nothing but determination and her 15-year-old son." His voice grew thick with emotion. "She cleaned office buildings at night and worked in a factory during the day so I could go to school. Never complained, never made me feel guilty for the sacrifices she made." "She sounds remarkable." "She is. And she would love you," Victor said with surprising certainty. "She always said I needed to find a woman who could see past what I had to, who I was underneath." Hannah felt her heart flutter at the implication. "And you think I can do that?" "I think you already have," Victor said quietly, reaching across the table to cover her hand with his. "You saw something worth protecting, even when you thought I was just a lonely man buying groceries." The touch of his hand sent familiar electricity up Hannah's arm, but this time she didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm up and laced their fingers together, marveling at how perfectly their hands fit. "Victor," she said softly, "I need you to understand something. I'm not playing games here. I don't know how to date a billionaire, how to navigate media attention, how to protect my daughter from the complications that come with your world." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if we do this, if we really try to build something together, I need to know you're serious. Not just about changing your business practices, but about us. About the possibility of a real future." Victor's grip on her hand tightened. "Hannah, I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Even if it means your world and my world colliding in ways that could be messy and complicated. Especially then," Victor said firmly. "Because I'm tired of living in a world where everything is calculated and safe and ultimately meaningless. You make me want to take risks again." Hannah felt tears threaten at the raw honesty in his voice. "I make you want to take risks?" "You make me want to be worthy of the kindness you showed a stranger in a grocery store," Victor said. "You make me want to build things that help people instead of displacing them. You make me remember what it felt like to dream about something bigger than profit margins." Their food arrived, but neither seemed particularly interested in eating. The air between them had become charged with possibility, with the weight of 2 people standing on the edge of something that could change everything. "I'm scared," Hannah admitted. "So am I," Victor replied. "But I'm more scared of walking away from you than I am of whatever complications we might face together." Hannah looked into his dark eyes, seeing vulnerability and hope, and something that looked remarkably like love. The practical voice in her head was screaming warnings about the impossibility of their situation, about the risks to her daughter's stability, about the media attention and social pressure they would face. But the deeper voice, the one that had guided her to pay for a stranger's groceries during a storm, was whispering something else entirely. It was whispering that some connections were worth fighting for, that some people were worth the risk, that sometimes love required courage. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay. Okay, let's try this. Let's see what happens when a grocery store cashier and a billionaire decide to ignore all the logical reasons they shouldn't be together." Victor's smile was radiant. "Are you sure?" "No," Hannah said honestly. "But I'm sure that I want to find out what we could be together." Victor lifted their joined hands and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was tender, respectful, and it sent warmth flooding through Hannah's entire body. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said softly. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." As they finally began to eat their dinner, Hannah realized that for the first time in years, she was allowing herself to hope for something more than just survival. She was allowing herself to believe in the possibility of love, of partnership, of a future that might be complicated but could also be beautiful. The conversation flowed easily for the rest of the evening, ranging from serious discussions about their hopes and fears to lighter topics that made them both laugh. Hannah found herself relaxing into Victor's company, charmed by his dry humor and impressed by his thoughtful responses to her questions. When they finally left the restaurant, Victor walked her to her car with his hand resting gently on the small of her back. The simple touch felt both protective and intimate, sending awareness skittering along Hannah's nerves. "Thank you for tonight," Victor said as they reached her car, "for giving us another chance." "Thank you for understanding why I needed to be careful," Hannah replied. "For not pushing when I needed space." They stood facing each other in the soft glow of the restaurant's exterior lighting, the autumn evening cool around them. Victor reached up slowly, giving Hannah time to pull away if she wanted to, and cupped her face in his hands. "May I kiss you?" he asked quietly, his accent thick with emotion. Hannah's heart pounded as she looked up at him, seeing desire and tenderness and careful restraint in his expression. This was a moment that would change everything, that would take them from potential to real, from maybe to definitely. "Yes," she whispered. Victor's kiss was gentle at first, soft and questioning, giving Hannah time to respond or retreat. But as she melted into his touch, as her hands fisted in his shirt and pulled him closer, the kiss deepened into something that spoke of hunger held carefully in check, of desire tempered by respect. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Victor rested his forehead against hers, his hands still framing her face. "That was worth waiting for," he murmured. "Yes," Hannah agreed, her voice breathless. "It was." They stood together for another moment, savoring the connection, the sense of possibility that hung in the air between them. Finally, Victor stepped back, though his hands lingered on her face for an extra beat. "Drive safely," he said. "Text me when you get home." "I will," Hannah promised, then surprised herself by adding, "When can I see you again?" Victor's smile was brilliant. "How about tomorrow? We could do something casual, a walk in the park, maybe lunch somewhere quiet." "I'd like that," Hannah said. "But Victor, yes. Next time, I want you to meet Destiny. If we're doing this, if we're building something real, she needs to be part of it." Victor's expression grew serious, understanding the significance of what Hannah was offering. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Hannah said firmly. "She's the most important person in my life. If you're going to be important too, you need to know each other." "I would be honored to meet her," Victor said quietly, and terrified. Hannah laughed, some of the tension breaking. "Good, that means you understand how important this is." As Hannah drove home, her lips still tingling from Victor's kiss, she realized that she was no longer asking herself whether this was a good idea. She was asking herself whether she was brave enough to see where it led. The answer, she was beginning to realize, was yes. Saturday morning dawned bright and crisp, the kind of autumn day that made everything seem possible. Hannah had barely slept, her mind racing with anticipation and anxiety about Victor meeting Destiny. She'd suggested they meet at Riverside Park for a casual lunch. Neutral territory, where Destiny could feel comfortable, and Victor wouldn't seem too intimidating. "Mom, you're making me nervous," Destiny observed as Hannah changed her outfit for the third time. "It's just lunch in the park, not a job interview." I know, but this is important, Hannah replied, settling on jeans and a soft blue sweater. I need you two to get along. What if we don't? Destiny asked with the directness that 15-year-olds specialized in. What if I think he's a pretentious rich guy, or he thinks I'm just some kid who's in the way? Hannah sat on the bed beside her daughter, taking her hands. Then we'll figure it out. But Destiny, I need you to know that you come first. Always. If this relationship ever makes you uncomfortable or threatens your well-being, it ends immediately. I know that, Mom, but I also know you deserve to be happy. Destiny squeezed her mother's hands. And if this guy makes you smile the way you've been smiling lately, then I want to give him a fair chance. An hour later, they were walking through Riverside Park, Hannah's stomach fluttering with nerves. Victor had texted that he was already there, waiting by the duck pond with lunch from a local deli. They spotted him before he saw them, sitting on a bench feeding ducks with what looked like appropriate breadcrumbs, his expensive clothes traded for jeans and a casual sweater that made him look younger and more approachable. When he turned and saw them approaching, his face lit up with that smile that never failed to make Hannah's heart skip. Hannah, he said, standing and greeting her with a brief but warm hug. Then he turned to Destiny with obvious nervousness. And you must be Destiny. I'm Victor. He extended his hand formally, treating her like an adult rather than a child, and Hannah watched her daughter's expression carefully. Destiny shook his hand with her usual confident grip, studying his face with intelligent eyes. Nice to meet you, Mr. Novak, Destiny said politely. Mom's told me a lot about you. All good things, I hope, Victor replied with a slight smile. And please, call me Victor. Mr. Novak makes me feel ancient. How old are you? Destiny asked with characteristic bluntness. Destiny, Hannah warned, but Victor laughed. It's fine. I'm 45, which probably seems ancient to you anyway. Not ancient, Destiny said judiciously, but definitely old enough to know better than to hurt my mom. The comment hung in the air for a moment, and Hannah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. But Victor's expression grew serious, and he looked directly at Destiny with respect. You're absolutely right, he said quietly, and I give you my word that I will never intentionally hurt your mother. She means too much to me for that. Destiny nodded, apparently satisfied with his response. Good. Now, did you really bring lunch? Because I'm starving. The tension broke, and they settled on a picnic blanket Victor had spread under a large oak tree. He'd brought an impressive spread from Giuseppe's Deli, sandwiches, salads, fresh fruit, and homemade cookies that made Destiny's eyes widen with appreciation. This is way better than the peanut butter sandwiches Mom usually packs for park trips, Destiny said, biting into an Italian sub. I heard peanut butter sandwiches were your favorite, Victor said to Hannah with mock seriousness. I'll have to remember that for next time. Very funny, Hannah replied, but she was smiling. The easy banter between Victor and her daughter was exactly what she'd hoped for. As they ate, Victor asked Destiny thoughtful questions about school, her plans for college, her interests and hobbies. Hannah watched him navigate the conversation with genuine curiosity, rather than the patronizing tone many adults used with teenagers. So you want to be a lawyer, Victor said when Destiny mentioned her career goals. What kind of law interests you? Civil rights, Destiny replied immediately. I want to fight for people who don't have the resources to fight for themselves. Victor's expression grew thoughtful. That's admirable and necessary. Have you thought about internship opportunities? There are several excellent civil rights organizations in the city that offer programs for high school students. Really? Destiny's interest was clearly piqued. Mom and I looked into some programs, but most of them are unpaid, and we can't afford for me not to work during the summer. What if they weren't unpaid? Victor asked carefully. What if there were scholarship programs that covered living expenses for students in internship programs? Destiny looked suspicious. Are you offering to pay for me to do an internship? I'm offering to connect you with programs that already exist, Victor clarified. Programs my foundation helps fund specifically for students from working families who can't afford unpaid internships. Hannah felt her heart clench at the careful way Victor presented the opportunity. Not as charity, but as something Destiny had earned access to through her own merit and goals. That would be amazing, Destiny said, then looked at her mother. If it's okay with Mom. It's more than okay, Hannah said softly, touched by Victor's thoughtfulness. It's exactly the kind of opportunity you deserve. They spent the next hour walking through the park, Victor and Destiny falling into easy conversation about everything from politics to music to Destiny's favorite books. Hannah found herself falling back slightly, just watching them interact, amazed by how naturally they seemed to connect. He's not what I expected, Destiny said quietly when Victor excused himself to take a phone call from his office. What did you expect? Someone more, I don't know, intimidating, arrogant, like he thought he was better than us because he has money. Destiny watched Victor pacing near the pond, his voice too low to overhear. But he actually listens when I talk, and he doesn't talk down to me like I'm a kid. He sees you, Hannah said simply. Your intelligence, your strength, your potential. He sees who you are, not just how old you are. Is that why you like him? Because he sees you too? Hannah felt tears prick her eyes at her daughter's insight. Part of it, yes. Victor returned, slipping his phone into his pocket with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry about that. Weekend calls are supposed to be for emergencies only, but my assistant has a loose definition of emergency. Everything okay? Hannah asked. Fine, just some questions about the revised development plans for your neighborhood. Victor's expression grew more serious. Actually, that's something I wanted to discuss with both of you. They settled back on the blanket, and Victor pulled out his tablet, showing them detailed architectural renderings and financial projections. The City Planning Committee is reviewing the revised plans this week, he explained. If approved, construction could begin in the spring, with the first phase of affordable housing units available by next fall. Hannah studied the images, noting the care that had gone into preserving the neighborhood's character while adding modern amenities and community spaces. It's beautiful, Victor. Really beautiful. There's just one potential complication, Victor continued, his voice growing cautious. Some of my investors are resistant to the changes. They're threatening to pull their funding if I don't revert to the original, more profitable design. Hannah felt her stomach drop. And if they do that? Then I fund the project myself, Victor said firmly. It will delay things by several months while I restructure the financing, but it won't stop the project. Several months could mean the difference between families staying and being forced out. Hannah pointed out. I know, which is why I'm fighting to keep the investors on board. Victor's jaw tightened with determination. I have a meeting with them Monday morning. I'm confident I can convince them that community-focused development is not only the right thing to do, but also profitable in the long term. Destiny had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. What if they don't listen? What if they decide you're too much of a risk? Victor looked at her with surprise, clearly not expecting such a sophisticated question from a teenager. Then I'll have to decide what's more important, their approval or doing what's right. And what will you choose? Destiny pressed. Doing what's right, Victor said without hesitation, even if it costs me everything I've built. Hannah felt her heart swell with pride and love for this man who was willing to sacrifice his empire for his principles, but she also felt a chill of fear at the implications. Victor, she said carefully, if you lose your investors, if your business suffers because of these changes, then I'll rebuild, Victor interrupted. I've started from nothing before. I can do it again if I have to. But you shouldn't have to, Hannah said, her voice tight with emotion. You shouldn't have to choose between doing right by my community and maintaining your livelihood. Hannah, my livelihood was built on practices that displaced families like yours, Victor said gently. If maintaining it requires continuing those practices, then it's not worth maintaining. They were interrupted by Victor's phone ringing again. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my head of security, he said apologetically. I should take this. Victor stepped away again, but this time his conversation was brief, and his expression when he returned was troubled. What is it? Hannah asked immediately. There's been a development in the investigation into who leaked our photos to the media, Victor said carefully, glancing at Destiny. It might be better if we discuss this privately. No, Destiny interrupted firmly. If this affects Mom, it affects me too. I'm not a little kid who needs to be protected from adult problems. Victor looked to Hannah, who nodded her agreement. What did they find? The person who photographed us at the cafe works for a private investigation firm, Victor said grimly. They've been hired to document my movements, my associations, my personal relationships. Hired by who? Hannah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. My investors, the same ones who are threatening to pull funding from the development project. Victor's voice was tight with anger. They're building a case to have me removed as CEO of my own company. Hannah felt the blood drain from her face. Because you're changing your business practices? Because I'm putting community welfare ahead of maximum profit? Because I'm making decisions based on principles rather than spreadsheets? Victor ran a hand through his hair, his accent thickening with stress. And because my relationship with you gives them ammunition to claim I'm emotionally compromised. What kind of ammunition? Destiny asked with the sharp intelligence that sometimes surprised adults. Victor hesitated, then answered honestly. They can claim that my feelings for your mother are clouding my business judgment, that I'm making expensive, unprofitable decisions to impress a woman rather than to benefit the company. Hannah felt sick. So our relationship is being used as evidence that you're unfit to run your own business? They're trying to use it that way, yes. Then we stop, Hannah said immediately. We end this before it goes any further. I won't be responsible for you losing everything you've worked for. Hannah, no. Victor, this is exactly what I was afraid of, Hannah continued, her voice growing stronger with conviction. I told you from the beginning that I couldn't risk my daughter's stability for a relationship. Well, now I'm risking your entire career too. That's not fair to anyone. You're not risking anything, Victor said urgently. I'm choosing to take risks for things that matter to me. My relationship with you, my commitment to your community, these aren't weaknesses to be exploited. They're reminders of who I want to be. Who you want to be isn't worth losing who you are, Hannah shot back. You've built an empire, Victor. You employ thousands of people. You fund scholarships and community centers. You have the power to make real change in the world. I can't be the reason you lose all of that. And I can't be the person who prioritizes profit over people anymore, Victor replied, his voice intense. Hannah, meeting you didn't make me weak. It made me remember what strength really means. They stared at each other across the picnic blanket, the beautiful autumn day suddenly feeling fragile around them. Destiny looked between them with worried eyes, clearly understanding more than either adult might have expected. This is about more than just you two, isn't it? Destiny said quietly, if they force Mr. Novak, Victor, out of his company, what happens to the new development plans? Victor's expression grew grim. They get scrapped. The original design gets implemented. Families get displaced exactly as they would have before. So if Mom breaks up with you to protect your career, our community still gets hurt because your investors will think they've won. Destiny continued with relentless logic. And if she doesn't break up with you, they'll use your relationship to force you out, and our community gets hurt anyway. Destiny, Hannah began. No, Mom, think about it, Destiny interrupted. Either way, these investors get what they want. Victor out of the way and maximum profit from their development project. The only difference is whether Victor goes down fighting for what's right or gives up to save his career. Victor stared at Destiny with something approaching awe. You've analyzed this very clearly. I'm good at seeing patterns, Destiny said with a slight smile. It's what's going to make me a good lawyer someday. Hannah felt a surge of pride for her daughter's insight, even as the implications of what Destiny had said sank in. So what do you think we should do? I think Victor should fight, Destiny said firmly. I think he should go to that meeting Monday and tell his investors that he's not backing down. That community-focused development is the future, and if they can't see that, they're not the kind of partners he wants anyway. That could cost him everything, Hannah pointed out. And backing down definitely costs our community everything, Destiny replied. At least fighting gives everyone a chance to win. Victor looked at Hannah with an expression that mixed hope and fear. What do you think? Hannah closed her eyes, weighing everything they'd discussed. When she opened them again, her gaze was steady and determined. I think my 15-year-old daughter is wiser than both of us, she said quietly. And I think if we're going to do this, if we're going to build something together, we need to do it honestly. No backing down, no compromising our values to make other people comfortable. Are you sure? Victor asked. The next few weeks could get very difficult. There will probably be more media attention, more pressure, more attempts to use our relationship against us. I'm sure, Hannah said, reaching for his hand. But Victor, you need to understand something. If you lose your company, if you lose your investors, if this fight costs you everything you've built, then I'll still have you, Victor interrupted softly, and that will be enough. Hannah felt tears threaten at the simple sincerity in his voice. You might not have me if you're not fighting for the right reasons. I won't be with someone who destroys his life just to prove a point. I'm not destroying my life, Victor said firmly. I'm saving it. I'm choosing to be a man you and Destiny can be proud of, rather than a businessman who values profit over people. Destiny cleared her throat. Can I say something? Both adults turned to her, and she looked at them with an expression far too mature for her age. I know I'm just a kid, and I know this situation is way more complicated than anything I've ever dealt with, she began. But I've been watching you two together today, and I can see something that maybe you can't see because you're too close to it. What's that? Hannah asked gently. You make each other braver, Destiny said simply. Mom, you've always been strong, but since you met Victor, you've been taking risks and standing up for things in ways I've never seen before. And Victor, everything I've read about your business practices before you met Mom suggests you played it safe, did what was expected, followed the profitable path. She paused, looking between them with those wise eyes that sometimes startled Hannah with their depth. But now you're both willing to risk everything for what you believe in. That's not weakness. That's love making you stronger than you could be alone. Hannah felt tears spill over at her daughter's words. Victor's hand tightened around hers, and when she looked at him, she saw the same emotional overwhelm in his expression. When did you become so wise? Hannah asked, her voice thick with tears. I learned from watching the strongest woman I know raise me to believe that love and principles are worth fighting for, Destiny replied. Now I'm watching her find someone who believes the same thing. Victor stood suddenly, pacing a few steps away from the blanket. Hannah could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. Victor? She called softly. He turned back to them, and Hannah was surprised to see tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, he said, his accent thick with emotion. It's just, I've spent so many years making decisions based on what made financial sense, what protected my interests, what maintained my position. And now, Hannah prompted gently, now I have a 15-year-old girl giving me better business advice than my board of directors. Victor said with a shaky laugh, telling me that doing right by people isn't just morally correct, it's strategically sound. It is strategically sound, Destiny said, matter-of-factly. Companies that invest in communities, that treat employees and customers as partners rather than resources, they're the ones that survive long-term. The others just extract wealth until there's nothing left to extract. Victor shook his head in amazement. Hannah, your daughter is going to change the world. I know, Hannah said proudly. The question is whether you're brave enough to help her do it. Victor returned to the blanket, kneeling beside Hannah and taking both her hands in his. I'm brave enough to try. Are you brave enough to let me? Hannah looked into his eyes, seeing determination and hope and love that took her breath away. Then she looked at her daughter, who was watching them both with an expression of expectant confidence. Yes, Hannah said quietly. We're both brave enough. As they packed up their picnic and prepared to leave the park, Hannah realized that something fundamental had shifted in their relationship. They were no longer two people from different worlds trying to figure out if they could bridge the gap between them. They were partners, facing challenges together, making decisions based on shared values rather than individual fears. The road ahead would be difficult. Victor's investors would fight dirty, the media attention would intensify, and there would be moments when the pressure might seem overwhelming. But as they walked back to their cars, Victor's arm around Hannah's shoulders and Destiny chattering excitedly about internship possibilities, Hannah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The confidence that comes from knowing you're not facing the future alone. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them together. And that, Hannah realized, made all the difference in the world. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from having all the answers, but from finding people who will stand with you while you figure them out together. Have you ever found that kind of partnership in your own life? Monday morning arrived with the weight of destiny. Victor's meeting with his investors was scheduled for 10 o'clock, and Hannah found herself unable to concentrate on anything else. She'd called in sick to work, something she never did, because the thought of ringing up groceries while Victor fought for their future felt impossible. At 9:30, her phone rang. "How are you holding up?" Victor's voice was steady, but she could hear the underlying tension. "I should be asking you that," Hannah replied. "Are you ready?" "As ready as I can be." "Hannah, whatever happens in there." "Don't," she interrupted. "Don't talk like this is goodbye. You're going to walk into that room and remind them why they invested with you in the first place. And if they don't listen?" Hannah took a deep breath, thinking of Destiny's words from the day before. "Then you'll know you fought for what was right, and we'll figure out what comes next together." Victor was quiet for a moment. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them, the first time either had spoken them aloud. Hannah felt her heart stop, then race forward with overwhelming emotion. "I love you too," she whispered. "Now go show them what you're made of." The next 3 hours were the longest of Hannah's life. She cleaned her already spotless house, reorganized closets that didn't need organizing, and jumped every time her phone made a sound. Destiny, who'd stayed home from school claiming she was too anxious to concentrate, finally forced her mother to sit down. "Mom, you're making me dizzy with all the pacing," Destiny said gently. "He's going to call when he can." What if they fired him? What if they voted him out and he's too devastated to call? "Then we'll go to him," Destiny said simply, "and we'll figure it out together, just like you promised." At 1:47 p.m., Hannah's phone finally rang. Victor's name on the screen made her hands shake as she answered. "Victor?" "Hannah." His voice was strange, carefully controlled. "Can you meet me? I need to see you." Hannah's heart dropped. "The meeting? Just meet me. Please. The address I'm texting you." Hannah looked at the address when it came through. It wasn't Victor's office or his apartment building. It was a location she didn't recognize. "Destiny, I have to go," she said, grabbing her keys. "Victor needs me." "Do you want me to come with you?" Hannah hesitated, then shook her head. "Stay here. I'll call you as soon as I know what's happening." The address led Hannah to a construction site on the edge of downtown, a partially built residential complex surrounded by chain-link fencing. She found Victor standing at the fence, staring at the skeletal framework of what would become apartments. "Victor?" she called softly as she approached. He turned, and Hannah's breath caught. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie was gone, and his expression was unreadable. "They voted me out," he said simply. "Effective immediately. 43% of the board voted to remove me as CEO, citing reckless disregard for shareholder interests and compromised judgment due to personal entanglements." Hannah felt the bottom drop out of her world. "Oh God, Victor, I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," Victor interrupted, his voice growing stronger. "Don't you dare be sorry. But your company, everything you built, is still mine," Victor continued, and now Hannah could see something in his expression that looked remarkably like satisfaction. "They can remove me as CEO, but they can't force me to sell my shares. And they definitely can't stop me from using my personal wealth to fund the projects I believe in." Hannah stared at him in confusion. "I don't understand." Victor gestured toward the construction site. "This is the first project I'm funding independently. Affordable housing for working families, with community spaces, good schools, and local business opportunities." He turned to face her fully. "This is what I'm building, instead of what they wanted me to build." "You're starting over?" "I'm starting right," Victor corrected. "And Hannah, I want you to be part of it." Before Hannah could ask what he meant, Victor pulled a set of architectural plans from his car and spread them on the hood. Hannah found herself looking at detailed designs for a community development that took her breath away. Community center with childcare and after-school programs, Victor explained, pointing to different sections. Small business incubator spaces, a health clinic, affordable housing mixed with market-rate units so there's no economic segregation. He looked up at her. And right here, a social services center that would need an experienced director. Someone who understands the community, who has the education and passion to make it work. Hannah's eyes widened as she understood what he was offering. Victor, I'm offering you a job, Hannah, running social services for the entire development. Salary that would let you and Destiny live comfortably while you help other families achieve the same stability. Hannah felt tears well up as she looked at the plans, seeing not just buildings but a vision of community that honored people's needs while providing opportunities for growth. This would take years to build, she said softly. Yes, and I want to spend those years with you. Victor moved closer, his hands coming up to frame her face. Hannah, I know this isn't the life you imagined when you paid for a stranger's groceries, but I can't imagine any life that doesn't include you and Destiny. Hannah looked into his dark eyes, seeing love and hope and determination that made her heart soar. Are you asking me to take a job or asking me something else? Victor smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. I'm asking you to build a life with me, to be my partner in every sense of the word, to help me create something that matters instead of something that just makes money. Hannah felt a laugh bubble up through her tears. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. Victor's kiss was fierce and grateful, filled with promise and relief and overwhelming love. When they finally broke apart, Hannah was breathless. There's something else, Victor said, his voice lower now, more intimate. The penthouse apartment I've been designing for the development, it has enough space for 3 people. If you and Destiny would consider living there with me. Hannah's heart raced at the implications. Victor, are you asking us to move in with you? I'm asking you to move forward with me, Victor replied softly, in every way that matters. The intensity in his gaze made Hannah's skin heat with awareness. They were standing in broad daylight beside a construction site, but the way Victor was looking at her made her feel like they were the only 2 people in the world. Show me, Hannah whispered. Victor's eyes darkened with understanding. He took her hand and led her to a small trailer that served as the construction office. Inside, Hannah could see blueprints covering every surface, a vision of the future they could build together. But Victor didn't stop at the blueprints. He turned to face her, his hands settling on her waist, and Hannah felt the air between them charged with electricity. Are you sure? He asked quietly, his accent thick with emotion and desire. I've never been more sure of anything, Hannah replied, stepping closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Victor's kiss this time was different, deeper, more urgent, speaking of hunger held carefully in check for weeks. Hannah melted into his embrace, her hands fisting in his shirt as months of tension and longing finally found release. Hannah, Victor murmured against her lips. I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your fierce protection of what matters to you. I love you too, Hannah replied, her voice breathless. I love your determination to change, your willingness to risk everything for what's right. Victor's hands trembled slightly as he traced the line of her jaw, her neck, the curve of her shoulder. Every touch was reverent, worshipful, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. You've saved me, he whispered, his forehead resting against hers. In every way a person can be saved. Hannah felt tears prick her eyes at the raw honesty in his voice. You've saved me too. You've reminded me that I deserve more than just survival. Victor lifted her onto the edge of the desk, standing between her knees, and Hannah felt her world narrow to just this moment. This connection, this overwhelming sense of rightness. When I saw you in that store, Victor murmured, his lips finding the sensitive spot behind her ear, paying for my groceries without asking for anything in return, I knew you were extraordinary. But I never imagined you would change everything about who I am. Hannah's breath caught as Victor's mouth traveled down her neck, as his hands found the hem of her sweater and slipped beneath to touch warm skin. Victor, you make me want to be worthy of your kindness, he continued, his voice rough with emotion and desire. You make me believe that love can transform everything. Time seemed to slow as they discovered each other. As clothing became obstacles to be carefully removed, as the small trailer became a sanctuary where two souls found their home in each other's arms. Victor worshipped her with a tenderness that brought tears to Hannah's eyes, showing her with every touch, every kiss, every whispered endearment that she was cherished beyond measure. And Hannah gave herself completely, holding nothing back, trusting this complicated, beautiful man with her heart and her future. When they finally came together completely, it was with a sense of profound rightness that went beyond physical connection. This was two people choosing each other, choosing to build something beautiful and meaningful together, choosing love over fear. Afterwards, they held each other in the quiet trailer, the sounds of the city muted around them, both understanding that they had crossed a threshold that would change everything. "What happens now?" Hannah asked softly, her head resting on Victor's chest. "Now we build," Victor replied, his arms tightening around her. "We build a community, a family, a life that honors what we've found together." Hannah lifted her head to look at him, seeing peace and determination in his expression. "And if it's difficult? If people criticize us? If the challenges seem overwhelming?" Victor smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then we face it together, because that's what partners do. They make each other stronger." Hannah felt her heart swell with love and confidence. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would meet them as a team. As they dressed and prepared to leave their sanctuary, Victor handed her a set of keys. "What are these?" Hannah asked. "Keys to the trailer, to the construction site, to everything we're building together," Victor said softly. "This is ours now, Hannah, all of it." Hannah looked at the keys in her palm, then at the man who had somehow managed to transform from enemy to partner to the love of her life in the space of a few extraordinary weeks. "Let's go tell Destiny," she said with a smile. "She's going to want to help design the community center." As they drove back toward Hannah's house, their hands linked across the center console, Hannah realized that sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most profound transformations. A storm, a declined credit card, and an act of simple kindness had somehow created a love story that would reshape not just their lives, but an entire community. And it all began with a woman who remembered where she came from, and a man who finally learned where he belonged. The most beautiful love stories aren't about perfect people finding each other. They're about imperfect people choosing to grow together. Sometimes all it takes is one moment of kindness to change everything. A few months later, Hannah stood in the community center that was now taking shape, watching Destiny lead a group of younger kids through a mock trial as part of the junior law program. Victor appeared beside her, slipping his arm around her waist with the easy familiarity of a man who had found his home. "She's going to be an incredible lawyer," Victor murmured, pride evident in his voice as he watched Destiny passionately argue her case. "She already is," Hannah replied, leaning into his warmth. "She just needs the credentials to make it official." The community center buzzed with activity: children in after-school programs, adults attending English classes, seniors gathering for social activities. It was everything they had envisioned and more, a testament to what could happen when love inspired action rather than just feeling. Hannah's new position as Director of Community Services had challenged and fulfilled her in ways she'd never imagined. Every day brought new families to help, new programs to develop, new ways to strengthen the bonds that held their neighborhood together. "Do you ever miss it?" Hannah asked quietly. "The corporate life, the boardrooms, the power?" Victor considered the question seriously, then shook his head. "I miss the efficiency sometimes, but I don't miss feeling empty at the end of every day. I don't miss measuring my worth by my net worth. And now? Now I measure my worth by whether Destiny smiles when she sees me, whether you fall asleep peacefully in my arms, whether Mrs. Patterson has a safe place to call home." Victor pressed a kiss to Hannah's temple. Much better metrics. As they stood together watching their community thrive, Hannah reflected on the impossible journey that had brought them here. A storm, a declined credit card, and a simple act of kindness had somehow created not just love, but transformation that rippled out to touch hundreds of lives. Sometimes the smallest gestures carry the greatest power. Sometimes paying for a stranger's groceries can change the world. What small act of kindness have you witnessed that created ripples far beyond its original moment? Have you ever found that opening your heart to help someone else ended up changing your own life in unexpected ways? Share your story in the comments below, because every act of compassion has the power to create something beautiful. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more inspiring tales of love, transformation, and the power of human connection. Tomorrow, we'll share another story about how unexpected encounters can lead to extraordinary change. Until then, remember, you never know when your simple kindness might be exactly what someone needs to transform their life. Be that light for someone today.